No, well, same.
And
Colin
here we
show.
are live for, well, here we are live for Raw episode 52. I believe this is the call-in edition, so this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to go and do some setting up while I leave Andrew to fill some space for me.
Cool, because I was going to bring up how good this cranberry raspberry sparkling water beverage with other natural flavors. It's quite good. It's more like diet soda, honestly, because it's a little sweeter. It's got some sweetener in it, but yeah, I'm a fan. These are like super cheap at the grocery store too. But anyway,
I'm immediately reminded of Wayne's World, where he's like, "We refuse to bow to any corporate sponsor," and he's like drinking a Pepsi on the screen. And his buddy's got like Reebok gear everywhere. It's awesome.
Oh no, this is yeah, what even is this? It's not even a brand. Signature Select. I think it's like the grocery store brand. I don't understand why anyone buys name brand shit when you can get the exact same thing without the name brand for like half the price. Sometimes it's fascinating. I really do think, not to like get into certainty and control and everything, but there is an element of that in the brand name, obviously, but then they're able to just bank on that for the whole time. They can mitigate, like there's not going to be an incentive to maintain the quality over time, right? It's kind of like, compared to like banking bailouts. Like it if the government's always going to be there, Big Daddy Uncle Sam is always going to be there. It's going to incentivize them to be less and less careful with things. It's just like, and we like to think that it's not the case, but it's inevitable, right? Like there is no way to mitigate that inevitability. But anyway, that's my gripe with brand name shit. As we're wearing just like our plain green t-shirts.
Do you have any idea how often people have asked me something like, what brand name is that? And I just look at them with this perplexed expression on my face, because it's never dawned on me to give a fuck. It's never even dawned on me that it's a thing that I should give a fuck about. Like, as far as I'm concerned, has a shirt size and form, seems shirt-like, serves the function of a fucking shirt. So I'm good, right? And that's pretty much it. And then again, the same is true for somebody who asks me, like, what size are you? I will still give them that same perplexed look. And admittedly, it's just because I have had so many different sizes over time. Like at one point I was telling you, I was really, really skinny. I think I was down to like 140, 150 pounds. I was really skinny. And then another point I was, twice in my life, I've been above 210. Once it was because I was working out a fuck ton. And the other, it was just because I wasn't working out at all. And my health was deteriorating and I just kept eating. And so it kind of grew to that. And anybody who's seen that video that I put on Instagram last year, where I show the pair of pants that I'm wearing, and then I stick my entire forearm down in those pants beside me, because they're the same pants that I had a year before that were tight at the time. And so I guess that's why when somebody asks me like, what size pants do you wear? I just kind of look at them like, I'm not sure at the moment.
I was gonna say, at first I thought it was maybe because size is all relative, it's irrelevant, like blah blah blah, it's made up anyway. But I guess it's honestly because you're not exactly sure. You fluctuated probably between like a small and a double XL, maybe.
And I don't keep track.
Yeah. It fits, kind of irrelevant, right? But that's wild. You were above 210. The most I weighed was like 203 when I was in college, and that was from the lifting a lot as opposed to the lack of working out. But yeah, 203 is big for me, and yeah, like holy shit, you at 210 would be wow. You got any pictures?
No, but I have the fucking stretch marks. Like I have shit tons of them, like all the back of my legs, man. It's all like you can tell my legs used to be way bigger, like because I used to do leg press of like 354 easy, right? And it was just that was because again I was in the gym every day for 3 years solid, like every day. And I'm kind of how do I put this, obsessive about things when I get involved with them, as something that you've expressed as well in terms of whatever avenue you went down in terms of dieting or Dolores Cannon or anything like that. I'm the same way. I get involved with something, I get heavily involved with this thing. And of course, this was leading up to my eventual intention to enroll in the military, right? So I was really focused on the health and the fitness, and I was jogging every morning, a lot, like a lot. It was ridiculous. I was a very different person than who you see before you now. Now I just run from things.
How old were you when you were going through that period?
About 16.
Okay.
Yeah, like 16 to 19. I was avidly into getting larger and stronger, and I was eating just a shit ton of carbs and everything else, and it got weird.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the interesting part is people will say things like there's everything can be an addiction, but there's healthy addictions and unhealthy addictions. And I don't know. I think anything, I think literally anything, even the healthiest stuff can be an addiction that takes you away from what's important. Like it can all be a hindrance to your experience, whether it's even, being super fucking healthy. Like I came across this video from I'm not saying he's living his life doing his thing. This guy Brian Johnson, he's like have you heard of him? He's like a billionaire who's basically becoming obsessed with mitigating how much he's aging. So like he's started to age backwards almost, and he's like biohacking to the extreme. And I saw a YouTube video the other day. A person I followed kind of like did a video with him going through his morning routine. And it's just like a ridiculous amount of things. And it's all very healthy stuff. And I'm not knocking the guy at all. Like this is something he's interested in. I was pretty interested in it. There's definitely stuff you can take from it, but it's so extreme that there's like no joy in it. It's all for, aging backwards. And he's like 48, but his biological age is like, what's that?
Vanity. It's all vanity.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, because with even the discussion of like, oh, what's the issue with a positive idea of yourself? If you have a positive idea of yourself and maintain it, you're still going to fear death. You're still going to fear that idea ending. So there's no escaping that. And that's a lot of this conversation is about just being free. Like having a positive idea of yourself and being free are not the same thing at all. Having a positive idea of yourself, even loving yourself, like that takes work. That takes a lot of effort. That is not freedom. That is not even close to freedom. It's just another prison that you feel a little bit better about because you're not suffering quite as much, but you're still suffering through something. And it's not to say that there's no need for any suffering whatsoever, but there's a different tonality to it, I think, when you start to experience a little bit more freedom. Whereas maintaining any idea of yourself, be it loving it or hating it, is just fucking exhausting. And that sort of practice with the biohacking and all of that, like, as I said, to each his own, but I don't know. There was so much rigidity. Like you really did sound like a robot in the video. And I don't know if he's that far from it.
It's just so interesting, and it gets to the point where it's ridiculous, and to the point where I think we've mentioned this before. The Sandra Bullock penis facial thing. Have we ever talked about that? About the fact that Sandra Bullock basically has facials that involve the foreskin of a Korean baby. And it's because there's something in that will help her skin become more elastic and more youthful. And so you can look this up, Sandra Bullock, Korean foreskin, if you'd like to, but it's an actual thing. And that is the extent that we'll go to. We will go to, that extreme just to avoid the process of aging. And I can understand where she's coming from, especially because admittedly the film industry is pretty fucking superficial, and a lot of women who are over the age of 40 or 45 are having problems finding roles within movies and so on and so forth. So there's especially a lot of pressure not to age or not to be visibly aging, but it can get out of hand. And again, as with everything, why not pressure the film industry? Right? Why not do more in terms of pressuring them to make different types of movies, or make different types of movies yourself? And that is something that we do see happening now. A lot of actresses who are no longer acting because of Hollywood stereotypes and Hollywood superficiality are now becoming directors. They're now creating their own movies where the main characters are normal people without those stereotypes, without those requirements. And so that's really encouraging, but that's the swing of the pendulum, right? So it's kind of exciting to see that happening. But again, like, yeah, Korean foreskin as a facial.
I'm definitely gonna look up what the hell's going on with that after this. But I mean, yeah, it makes sense on the pursuit of that when there's one thing.
I have to read this to you. Hold on.
Okay.
Basically, okay, what is it I want to say? It's a beauty treatment that uses stem cells from the foreskin of circumcised children to achieve that Hollywood glow. There you go. Stem cells from the foreskin of babies. In this specific instance, and this was on the Ellen DeGeneres show, I believe she did say a Korean baby.
Wow. I'm not gonna get into any more thoughts on that here before I get myself in trouble. Holy shit. I guess it makes sense, like in the pursuit of that, like of one thing that you're so focused on. We see it with companies and the pursuit of profit. When profit is the end all be all, everything falls short of that. Any concern, concern for humans, concern for employees, concern for the world, the earth, reality in general. When profit's the end all be all, everything else comes second and is not gonna, like, if it's profit or anything, it's gonna be profit. And in the film industry, when it's looking younger or anything, it's gonna be looking younger. It's not living a balanced, healthy, enjoyable life. It's looking younger. And so it's interesting when people get so focused on that, they'll literally go to the ends of the earth to do so. And it becomes like, it is a disease. I mean, it's the disease of identity. And people don't recognize how much of a disease that is. And it comes in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. But it's a disease. It's a psychological disease that just pretty much everyone is suffering from. So we don't recognize it for what it is. We have all these disorders and diseases and things that are having to do with it. All the things that doctors diagnose and is it psychiatrists or psychologists? I never really know the difference.
Psychiatrists.
Okay. That diagnose different disorders, and it's all having to do with identity. Like, that's the root of all of them. We're just looking at branches of that, but really, I mean, everything we psychologically suffer through comes back to your idea of yourself. And people don't want to admit that. They want to look at the branches and the leaves, but there is a root. And when you get to that, it's like everything starts to make more sense. Like, there's not so much confusion as to what the hell's going on? Like, why do I feel this way? You're thinking about yourself. There's a lot of reasons that you're thinking about yourself. There's a lot of habits that are not forcing you, but incentivizing you to continue thinking about yourself. There's a whole society and entire environment that are incentivizing you to continue thinking about yourself. But that's where it comes from. It really does. And once you start to see that more and more, it can be easier to tap back into that recognition. I think before you've gotten used to seeing that for what it is, you keep kind of wondering, you keep focusing on other things, getting what you want, just cessation of the suffering. But it's all an avoidance of the root cause, which is the ultimate end of it. And it's not to say that it ends permanently, but once you start to see it more and more, you can go back to that. And it's a much quicker of a recognition than when you're running around thinking that you're not thinking about yourself too much, when it doesn't have to do with your idea of yourself, when you don't recognize that the root issue of all of your psychological suffering is your idea of yourself.
Well said. So I thought I should take a moment to mention that this is the call-in edition of our show, which means that you can call in and be on the screen with us for up to 10-ish minutes. You can go to dualisticunity.com/live. I will post that in the chat section right now. And then there is a queue, of course, or if there is a queue, you'll just have to wait and we'll go through the order as quickly as we can. But you are welcome to join us with a question. You are welcome to join us with a complaint. If you would like to challenge us you are welcome to do that as well. We just enjoy the opportunity to chat with the community. And so this is our call-in episode that we do every 2 weeks. That said, there are some changes coming to Dualistic Unity. I just thought I'd take some time to mention them. The biggest one is that our schedule for our Patreon calls is going to be shifting going into season 5. There will be an announcement about that on Patreon very shortly, probably within the next few days. We're going to have some guest hosts, that kind of thing. Andrew and I are frankly getting busier. We are in the middle of working on a book. He is currently traveling. We are trying to get out more content, and we are trying to do more in terms of building the community and getting more exposure. And so there's a lot that we're doing. And so things are going to be shifting going into season 5. Likewise, we are going to continue to reach out to bigger guests. We are really hoping to get the attention of some people like Joe Rogan or Russell Brand or Graham Hancock or any of those people. And so if you would like to see that happen, we encourage you to be a pest. Absolutely, just go and annoy the absolute shit out of these people on YouTube, on their social media, wherever you can find them. Send them a fan letter, find their email, whatever it is. Mention Dualistic Unity and that we would love to chat with them. My email address is ray@dualisticunity.com. So you can just forward them to me. But if they enjoy the show, we would love to chat with them because we just want to continue to spread this discussion and make it obvious that it's happening. Because that is the one thing that we hear the most from people over and over again on our Instagram account and through direct message. People are amazed this conversation is just happening, which is kind of funny because it's just a conversation that never settles on anything. Like, it really is just a conversation about life, about existence, without having to be an expert, without having to be, certain about any answers whatsoever. It really is just a chance to hang out together and make that the purpose in itself. And so it's great how well received this has been thus far. And it's all because of the community. It's all because of the people who have been participating in the roundtables and the group discussions on these call-in shows. So yeah, reach out to anybody that you think should be on the show and get them to get in touch with us. That said, if you are a person who has reached out to me to be on the show, or you have a guest that you would like to be on the show and I have not responded, it's because we are actually building a queue of people, or it's also possible that I'm just not interested.
Honesty is important. Very, very important. Fucking hey, I just had a thought and I was like, I don't need to write that down. That's so obvious. I'll remember that one. But it was having to do with talking about the podcast. Yes. It's funny how I mix up how I explain the podcast, because people are like, oh, what do you do? What do you do for work? When I'm talking to people, I'm like, oh, I host a podcast, and it's kind of a business being built around it, and do social media videos and stuff. And that always, people are interested in hearing more about that. And first question is always, oh, what's the podcast about? So I kind of play with my response. And recently I've just been saying, well, it's pretty much just a conversation surrounding the recognition that you don't have to be anything other than what you are. And people are like, oh my God, I love that. That's so amazing. And it's so funny because it's like, it's such a basic recognition. Like, that's kind of what I've come to is like one of the best ways to explain it. I've toyed with, well, it's a conversation surrounding the recognition that you're God. And that doesn't always go over so well. That gets people more like, like more concerned than curious. And so I've been going with, well, just conversation about the recognition that you don't have to be anything other than what you are, and you're whole and complete exactly as you are, and there's nothing more to become because you're already it. So life isn't so much about becoming anything as it is just paying attention to it and enjoying the experience that you're having here and now, or at least paying attention to it. Not always enjoying, but paying attention and being involved in it, and not what it means about you. And the response to that is like, people are almost mind blown in a way. Like, it's such a positive response. Like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And like, yeah, it's kind of, God, I think it's how life should be. It's like one of the core recognitions that children should be raised upon, and yet it's not. And it's such a foreign statement. You don't have to be anything other than what you are. And so it gets this response, but that's what everyone's circling around. Like, all of, as I was saying before with the disorders, like there's this assumption that there's inherently something wrong with us, as opposed to inherently nothing wrong with us. And so because we think there's inherently something wrong with us, we're always trying to figure it out. Like, I'm suffering, I'm dealing with stuff, like, what's wrong with me? If I just figure out what's wrong with me and know it, and then, big pharma gives me some pills to deal with it, then I'll be okay. If I can just figure out what's wrong, or if I can just get this thing that I really want, or become this person that I want to become. And it's always that. It's always something. I need an excuse in order to accept myself. I need an excuse in order to just fucking be myself and be okay with where I'm at. And you don't. That's the biggest illusion there is, along with the recognition that you're not what you think you are, but they go hand in hand. You're not what you think you are. You are what is. You don't have to be anything else other than what you are. What you're going through, what you're dealing with, all the things you think are wrong with you aren't. They're just not. And if you can recognize that, it's not always comfortable to recognize that also, because we want there to be something wrong. Our mind wants there to be something to fix, something to solve, a problem to resolve. That's how it functions, fixing problems. So if there's no problems with us, then, our mind being our fucking master isn't quite so necessary anymore. So it's going to push against it. It's going to keep trying to find things, but you can know that there isn't, and you can practice that recognition. When it comes up, just know that it's not true, and there's nothing you have to solve. It's just recognizing over and over that there's nothing more to become. Can't become better. You're already where the most good, best you could possibly be.
It's funny that I shared this on Discord recently. It was a scene from a television show, but it's a quote that was being delivered. And the quote was, "In times of peace, the warlike man attacks himself." And that's very much the case, that we are our own problem to a very large degree. And it's simply because we don't just settle and recognize what we are. We are always looking for something to do that's going to solve uncertainty or the discomfort that goes with not knowing everything, because that's really it. We just don't know everything, which means there's potentially a shit ton to fear, right? Like, that's the whole point. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen next. A lot could happen next. A lot. I can't even get into everything that could possibly happen. This is why I really enjoy learning about previous catastrophes in Earth's history. Like the fact that, the dinosaurs have been kicking along for a good long time and then weren't, right? Things like that. Like the fact that the Yellowstone caldera, for example, goes off like every 400,000 years or so and is overdue at the moment, but that caldera itself basically causes an ice age every time it goes off, and it wipes out a good portion of the human race. Well, a good portion of whatever life is on the planet. We actually don't remember that happening during the human race happening, but it's going to be interesting when it does. But the point is that all of this stuff can happen. I grew up in an area of Ontario near Sudbury, and if anybody gets the chance, I encourage you to look up the city of Sudbury, Ontario, because it exists inside a giant meteor crater. It's huge. It's just massive. Literally, the entire industry in that city is mining because of all of the minerals that they get out of where this meteor basically pummeled the earth and wiped out everything around it. Like, that stuff gets me. I love that stuff. But the point is that that's just some of the things that could possibly happen. We don't know. And normally that terrifies us. But it's nice to remember we've never known. They've always been possible. You're still here. So if you get caught up in your fear, it's not based on evidence. It's not based on the fact that something is going to happen. It's just that something could happen. And you lack faith in yourself, or you lack a reasonable ability to look at what might happen and go, and then I'd be dead. Because that's really as far as it goes. Like, if the sun went supernova, and then we'd be dead. There is no argument about survivability. There's nothing that you can do. It doesn't come down to your performance. It doesn't come down to your potential. It doesn't come down to anything. The environment is now fucked. But here's the nice part. Everywhere that there will ever be anything alive that has any experience whatsoever, it's going to be as you. And I don't mean you, your collection of thoughts and ideas. I mean, it will literally think of itself as me. That's the only way it can experience anything, is as me. And that's what you are. You are that me that is everything in life ever, experiencing anywhere, forever, now. That's the whole point. So you can get worried about uncertainty, but the fact is you're just uncertain about how big you are.
Exactly. And you're not dead right now, at least as far as you know. You also could be. You very well could be dead right now and just experiencing this as a dream, because you're not what you think you are. So technically you are kind of dead. But it's funny thinking about, all our gripes as a society right now, and just if that uh Yellowstone thing, whatever it's called, did explode, like all of our attention would be on that. Like all the fucking bullshit that we focus on as a society, all the psychological shit, all the identity shit, all the stuff that everyone's always fucking up in arms with, would be so irrelevant. It's hilarious because it is irrelevant right now. It's so irrelevant. Like, but we think it's so important. Like, if anything that had any actual impact, or, if like anything, if birds started getting angry, if all the birds, I think there was a movie in like the 50s or 60s called Birds, where based on a true story, actually, where these birds got into some acidic sort of, I don't know, thing. What's it called? Whatever. Some sort of like, what's the green goop usually called when you see that? Like
Toxic waste.
Toxic waste. Something along those lines. It gets in and they got all loopy basically and started flying at people and into buildings all the time. Like,
You're
they
talking
went.
about The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock, correct?
Yeah, I think that's it. I've never seen it, but I heard it was a movie because I was thinking about how crazy it would be one time and talking to the friend about, if birds just started getting pissed. Like, if you ever had a bird that was a little, I don't know, off its rocker, and because I've had a bird kind of fly at me and like swoop in really close and try and, I don't know, poke me with its beak, and it's sketchy as fuck. And that's just one. They're like, whoa, what the fuck's going on? Imagine if like a million birds just started targeting a city. And that would be where all our focus goes, because we don't deal with those types of situations anymore. I really like that quote. I wrote it down: in times of peace, the warlike man attacks himself. And that's just what we're doing all the time, because we don't have many good things to gripe about. We don't have many things like they did, when we're trying to survive. Like, we kind of got that whole survival thing figured out. And so there isn't so much of a focus on the physical dangers anymore. We have very, very few physical dangers in, first world countries in North America. I get, I'm in a very comfy part of the world, but that's where that's where we start attacking ourselves. That's where we start having nothing good to think about, nothing reasonable that we got to focus on. So we just start thinking about ourselves, and it's crazy. And now, we're doing jobs, and it's been kind of starting to be proven that an 8-hour workday isn't necessary. Like, we could probably have a 3-hour workday for most jobs, and like a 4-day work week, 3-hour workday. But we just have gotten used to this. There's a certainty in it. 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It is what it is. If you don't have work to do, then just stay busy, or else you're going to get paid less if you can do it in a shorter amount of time, because, we're greedy and all that shit. But that's because we don't have to be concerned about all that anymore. Then that job that we don't really need to spend as much time on, if we really looked at the whole picture of, whatever industry you're in, things could probably be a lot more efficient. But, now we're caught up in what it means about me. Oh, if I'm not working all day, that means maybe I'm going to be seen as lazy, and all of these crazy ass things that are just thinking about ourselves a bunch, because we have nothing better to focus on. We don't have to worry about the, saber tooth coming into our tribe and eating our babies and stuff. We're like, I don't know, worried about what Sally down at the desk next to us thinks about how we did on our, job the day before. It's just crazy.
It is. It is crazy. I wanted to mention something because while we've been recording this episode, there have been comments and some questions and whatnot in the live stream. And what's interesting is that there have been, I believe, 2 or 3 questions now where it was like, what do you guys think of parenting? What do you do when somebody's asking about simulation theory, that kind of thing? And I've just been linking to previous community topics. And I just wanted to mention to anybody who's been listening, if you're watching the podcast and you're in the first season or the second season, you may not know about the community topics series, in which case I encourage you to check that out. Just type in Dualistic Unity and whatever it is you're interested in, and you'll likely find a community topic that's about it. That's what I do when somebody asks. I just go Dualistic Unity on Google, and then I type in simulation theory, and sure enough, there's community topics, number 33 or whatever it was. And it's because we have 36 of them out. I think we've recorded 37. So there's a lot of topics that have been suggested by our community that we have actually gone into for like 30 or 40 minutes, just deep diving on that one subject. So, or sometimes 2 if they're relevant to each other. So I encourage you to check those out. I guess is what I'm saying, is that it's been great to be able to answer these questions with full episodes, but they're out there and you can find them. Absolutely. That said, we did have a question earlier on, and I wanted to get to it before we do end up with anybody who wants to join us in this live stream. I've been in the same relationship since I was 16. I'm 22 years old now. I've been doing a lot of reflecting and getting ready to start my career. I feel like I haven't had the opportunity to be free from any attachment. She's an amazing girl, and it's hard for me to move on, but I feel like I need the change in life. I'm very hesitant to move on, but it's not fair to her that I feel this way. I would say that it isn't necessarily about what's fair, but it is about what's real. I mean, the fact is, if you want to talk about fair, being with somebody who's not telling you the truth about how they feel, being with somebody who's just putting on a show, being with somebody who's just more or less staying with you to not hurt your feelings, that's not fair. That sucks. That's just an ongoing hell. That might seem like you're doing the nice thing. It might seem like you're being kind, but in reality, you're not. You're not being kind. Right. And I get that that's a whole complicated mess. It's not like you're just going to go, I've been thinking about it, it's over, especially after such a long relationship, because, you're friends, you've been together a long time. It's not just that this person's a villain, right? It's just that you're growing in a different direction. And recognizing that is both a mature and responsible thing to do. Not communicating that is not a mature or responsible thing to do. So you definitely want to communicate that, but you want to do so in a way where where they recognize that the alternative is lying to them. The alternative is not being honest about how you feel. Now, that may actually change the relationship. Your relationship may turn on a dime in this process of communicating how you feel, because that person may feel the same, or they may have a feeling that they're not communicating to you because they're worried about what you might think. And so honesty, transparency, it spawns a whole other conversation, which may spawn the next evolution of your relationship, or it may be how that relationship comes to an end or turns into something else, like just friendship or mutual respect. Right. So I would say that, yes, you should be honest. I would say that you should be as honest as you can with as much empathy as you can. You don't need to be harsh about it, unless, of course, you have to be harsh about it. But it really just comes down to giving that person the opportunity to accept that you're being authentic, to recognize that you're being honest and open, and that it takes some courage to do so. You can even say, I really don't like having this conversation. You can lay it out in the way that you're experiencing it. Like, this sucks. I really don't like being here. I kind of feel like an ass, all of that. And that's okay. It's okay to communicate to people like that. It is okay. It doesn't mean that you're going to get to control what the response is. It doesn't mean that you're going to avoid feeling like dog shit after. But it is how you get through that conversation with as little of a toxic bonfire as possible, right? Because then the feeling of being guilty, the feeling of feeling like you hurt someone after the fact, feeling like dog shit, basically, will pass, because you'll recognize that it was the healthy thing to do. But it takes time. It takes time and the process to go through all of that, to recognize that really showing someone love is also being willing to say what's true, because it's not love if you're just perpetuating misery for the two of you.
Yeah. And I think in situations like that, I don't have necessarily a ton to add on top of that. That was well said, but there's a degree of false certainty that it's going to go a certain way. You never know. I'm not saying it's this situation, but you never know when the other person's feeling similarly. You don't know what they're going through necessarily. You don't know how they're going to respond, what they're going to think about that conversation. And yeah, it's not something you have to mince words with necessarily, but it's also not something you have to sugarcoat, and especially in your experience. And you don't have to, put on a brave face even necessarily. Like, it's brave enough just having the conversation, just being willing to go through it. But yeah, we have this whole massive idea of what being nice is, and it's usually just aligned with what allows us to remain comfortable. And being nice isn't always comfortable. It doesn't always feel good. And yeah, like situations like this, there's nothing we can say to make it easy. Like, that's just not straight up not an easy situation to go through. There's nothing about it that's easy or even simple. Like, it's tough. There's a lot to a 6-year relationship. But the alternative is not talking about it despite feeling about it. Like, it's there comes a point, I think, where it is kind of cut and dry when you're feeling a certain way. It's like you can keep trying to avoid it, but it's going to be there. And if it's still there after a while of sitting on it, you kind of know what you got to do. Like, there's no one that's going to tell you necessarily how to do it or what you need to do. Like, you always know inside. It's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to lie to yourself. But yeah, you think it's nice to avoid, but it's not. It's nicer to discuss and have the conversation and be open about how you're feeling and what you're going through, for sure. And you don't know what the future is going to hold, with any sort of relationship. You don't know. Just because it ends for a bit doesn't mean it's forever necessarily. But yeah, so there's a lot of uncertainty in that, but there's more certainty in how you feel, I think, and confronting that is important.
I'm just not a big fan of the idea of just nice, right? Like, it really, because if you take it far enough, it becomes, a lot of the 7 deadly sins in terms of like gluttony and sloth and all that other stuff, right? Like, it's really nice to sit on my ass watching my favorite TV shows all day, eating all of my favorite foods, drinking all of my favorite drinks, getting as intoxicated as I want to. That's really nice. But if I do it for so long that I can't actually get up anymore, or my health starts to deteriorate, or I'm getting bored with these TV shows, or I'm drinking myself to my liver's fucking failing, that kind of thing, all of a sudden nice turns into not nice at all. And it's because if you aren't actively accepting that both sides of the spectrum are a part of existence, and you're always trying to go towards the positive, you're going to fear the negative more. But if you embrace the negative side, and when I say negative, I just mean the shit that you'd prefer not to go through, then all of a sudden you'll get over that preference. It won't seem so bad. You'll actually be able to take experiences that you would otherwise like to avoid and turn them into things that you actually enjoy. And I mean this. I absolutely mean this. This is something that Andrew and I have talked about before. I have had so many labor jobs, just grunt work jobs in my life, where I have happily just been like, great, and off to work. And it's just because that's where I am. Outside of my preference, outside of my ideal, where I might be in my life, where I might go, if only I had another job, all that shit, I'm just where I am. And that is an opportunity for me to recognize how much conflict I'm still putting on myself, how much I'm getting in my own way, how much I'm attacking myself in times of peace, that kind of thing, right? But I wanted to bring this up since we don't have anybody that's currently calling in, which you can do, dualisticunity.com/live. I wanted to talk about this unfortunate thing that happens, and it really is when we're steeped in our identity and in our ego and in this illusion of control and in the illusion that there is, in fact, something better than here and now. This thing that happens where we look back at our life and we look back at our choices and we go, but if only I had done this thing, and then everything would be different. Then I'd be here. Then this would be happening. If I was still with that person, or I still had that job, or if I managed to save that money, or if I won that lotto ticket, or whatever the fuck it is. And the fact is that it's all speculation. It's all assumption. It's all just based on the fact that you're honestly just trying to get away from the here and now so hard that you're creating an entire different fucking timeline in your head. That's really all it is. You're creating a fictitious universe where everything is happy and there's unicorns everywhere. And then none of that's true. It's just that you think that somehow dwelling on that, which feels good, the idea of having all that feels good, except that it makes what you have now feel like shit. So you're not actually helping yourself. You might think you're helping yourself because you're dwelling on something that makes you feel better in the short term, but it causes a long-term perspective on your entire life. So it really is surrendering all of that. If you really want to experience what you're doing right now, surrender all of your thoughts that you should be somewhere else and keep surrendering them, because you will continue to get deeper and deeper and deeper into how to make the most out of where you are right now.
Well said. Yeah, it's funny because we did have Ray and I chatted about this a little bit earlier today before one of our other calls, but I just went on a run in between our calls and filmed a video. 5 things I would tell my 15-year-old self to help him navigate high school / life in general. And I immediately followed it with, to be clear, these are not regrets. Regret is fucking stupid. I don't have any regrets, quite frankly, because it's just a way to avoid the only place that you can actually make any changes in your life, which is here and now. So it's like, as Ray said, it feels good. And it also is rooted in this fucking made up narrative that, if only that happened, things would be this way. The only things that it happened, things would be another way. But guess what? If they had happened, you'd still be in the same mentality that you are, wishing that something else was fucking different, because it's never the thing. It's never the situation. It's you and your willingness to let go of the idea that things should be different, that you should be different, that there's something wrong with you. Because there isn't. It's just that. It's not about the life, the situation. I get it. There are definitely way more difficult lives and a lot of different types of suffering in reality, but we create a lot on top of that. And like I had a comment on a video. I was talking about letting go of the idea that anything's wrong or something like that. And someone commented, well, I have a really bad headache right now. That's wrong. And I'm like, and I didn't give a smart ass response like I sometimes do. I just said, I totally feel you. I had one last week, and honestly, not a whole lot made it better, but what made it worse was thinking that I shouldn't be having it, was resisting it, was thinking that things should be different, was wishing that I didn't have a fucking headache. So not doing that doesn't necessarily make the headache feel amazing, but there are absolutely things you can do to make your situation feel worse. There are absolutely things you can do to make the situation that you're going through, to make your life, to make your current reality way worse and experience way more suffering on top of that, which is stemming from thinking that things should be different, thinking you shouldn't be where you're at. You are where you're at. Always, literally always. You're always where you're at. You're always feeling what you're feeling. You're always going what you're going through, no matter what. When you're going through something else, you're going through what you're going through. When you're feeling something else, you're feeling what you're feeling. You can't not be feeling what you're feeling. You can't not be feeling what you're currently feeling. Ever. That's always the case, no matter what. And so what has to shift? Your idea of what should be happening. And that's the big shift. That's what helps you navigate any situation. What's the Bruce Lee quote? Don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to handle a hard one, something like that. And that's just it. It's not about things being different when you're regretting shit. It's not about that. It's about letting go of the idea that things should be different. There's no, like, regret is the most pointless thing you can ever possibly focus on. It really is. Like, it helps you escape where you're at, but doesn't help anything actually change or improve or your situation be any different. It just digs you further into it. Really, it just deepens that state of suffering that you're currently experiencing that you wish was different. But there's a way to get through that a little bit more seamlessly, a little bit more quickly, which is not focusing on all the things that should have happened, that should have been different. It's just being where you're at and letting go of the idea that things should be any different than they are.
Nice. Absolutely. We have another question in the comment section. We've had quite a few questions. Some of them I've addressed by pointing to other episodes. In this one, tips on how to let go of our ego controlling us and start living through the here and now. So they were mentioning that they had just started the podcast. So I encourage you to keep going through seasons 1 and 2 because we addressed that in extreme detail. But to weigh in on this quickly, I would like to say that a big part of it is letting go of the idea that the ego controls you. The fact is that your perspective of yourself, whatever your idea of yourself is your ego. It's not controlling you. It's something that you invest in for a sense of control. It's something that you invest in because it offers you some degree of false certainty. Who am I? What am I worth? What's my potential? Where do I stand compared to everybody else and my assumptions of them? So it's not controlling you. You're invested in it. You're invested in the idea of yourself being truth. You're invested in the idea of others being truth. You're invested in the idea that you can compare those ideas and establish value or some sense of value. You're invested in this illusion. It's not controlling you. It's something that you are using as a strategy repeatedly to deal with the uncertainty of being here now. That's all it is. So it's not an effort to let go of your ego or to get over your ego. It's the cessation of effort. It's the cessation of trying to get somewhere. It's the cessation of investing in that idea that if you just learn this one more thing, then you'll be enlightened. It's recognizing that all of those thoughts are about a fiction. They're about a fiction. They're not about you. That's all it is. And then just stop investing in it as truth. That's it. That's all it is. And I know I make that sound simple, but the fact is it's over and over and over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. I'm going to say it one more time, over and over and over again for the rest of your existence, because your ego is always going to pop up as a solution to your uncertainty. Your brain is always going to offer some fiction to give you an idea of who you are, because that's how it works. And if you ever believe it, you're fucked.
That was a great answer. I don't have a lot to add. No, that kind of covered the synopsis, I would say. But yeah, seasons 1 and 2 cover that in depth, and we go circle around that recognition. That's basically dualistic unity in a nutshell, is that recognition. But I think the side of it, recognizing your idea of yourself is never the truth, recognizing that your value doesn't waver, recognizing that you're a whole and complete as you are. Like, your value doesn't waver in the sense that it can't go up. I think this is, I say this one all the time, but this is the one that takes people, like, once they start feeling like their value is going up, they invest in it even more. And there's an inevitable flip side to that coin, which is the fear of it going down. As soon as you think it can go up, you think it can move. And as soon as you think it can move, the fear of it going down enters the chat. But you're whole and complete as you are. Your value can't go up. So letting go of that is, I think, a massive key. The fear of it going down is always going to be there when you're invested in yourself, and the desire for it to go up is always a little bit of a shinier side. It's like that sparkly side of the coin, and the dull side of the coin is your value going down. And we like that side. When the coin flips and it lands on that, we're like, oh yeah, I like my idea of myself quite a bit. But there's always the flip side, because it's a full coin. Can't have the front without the back. It's always going to be there. That fear is always going to be there. So as you let go of the idea that your value can possibly go up, no matter if someone likes you, no matter if your boss gives you a promotion, no matter if you do really well on that test, no matter if you give a really good speech, none of those things, none of them, your value does not go up with any of them ever. Because as soon as it does, the fear of it going down comes in. As soon as it does, you're comparing yourself to other people, because, doing a good job on anything, you're just doing a job. You're just doing it. There isn't even really, like, even the idea of a good job isn't really a thing, because it's still in relativity. It's still relative to doing a bad job. Always. It's always that. It's always that relativity. Even, like, everything is relative. I wish I was skinnier. I wish I was bigger. I wish I was smaller. I wish all these things. Smaller than what? Smaller than what? It's all relative. You don't need to live in that world of relativity and that world of comparison. Without the idea of yourself to reference, there isn't so much need to exist in that. And recognizing that it isn't the truth, you can finally be free. You're running around different prisons as long as you're maintaining that idea, as long as you continue investing in it, as long as you think there's a possible fucking chance that it can ever go up. You're kind of fucked as soon as you start investing in that. So letting go of that is I would say, more difficult. It's the shinier side, but that's what allows you to recognize that it also can't go down.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because sometimes it's the negative side that we get addicted to. Sometimes it's the positive side that we get addicted to. And it really just depends on what we think is in our best interest. Honestly, we really do get to the point where we consider beating ourselves up and self-sabotaging has some strategy, whether it's getting us pity or attention, or it's giving us an excuse to not take responsibility for our lives. Like there's an addiction on both sides, and it's important to recognize that some of us sit on either side of the fence. So we're never safe, regardless of what your preference might be. We do have somebody who would like to join us. They would like to talk about anything and everything, but escapism being the main thing. So luckily we do talk about anything and everything, and occasionally escapism. So this is Mason. Mason, thank you so much for joining us. We'll let you connect via audio before, of course, you respond to me, but this is going to be fun.
Hell yeah. Mason is connected to audio. Hey, what's up, Mason? How you doing?
I believe you were on mute. Welcome. We can hear you.
Hey.
How's it going?
Oh shit, there we go. What's going on?
Hey, how you doing, Mason? Good to see you.
Doing well. I cannot lie, this is pretty trippy. I've been listening to you guys for about a year. Yeah, so it's pretty fucking
Appreciate
cool,
it.
man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I guess Andrew, I saw one of your TikToks probably about a year ago about like you saying, imagine you had no past, and that shit blew my mind. Like, and yeah, so I pretty much, you also mentioned about your podcast, so that's why I checked it out. And so yeah, I've been listening for about a year, like I said, so it's pretty crazy thinking back, and then now finally, I guess, doing something with it. So besides listening, but yeah, I'm also not the best at putting together thoughts, but I know that's not important here. So
You're fucking crushing it so far. So absolutely no worries there. But no, great to see you, man. That that insight fucking changed my life. And hold on, give me 1 sec. We got people in the queue, so I gotta get on this timer. But yeah, great. Glad you joined. I know you had a topic you wanted. It sounds like escapism. You wanted to cover a bit. Did you have specifics you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, so I know like the dangers of escapism is like you basically become so attached to whatever, I don't know, whatever it is that you pretty much just are so invested in it that it becomes kind of like a part of you in a sense. So I was just, so that obviously, ties back to identity, like you guys have said a lot, but I'm just curious, like if you're conscious of that, is there like a danger to like wanting to keep doing it, or is there a point where you should stop and realize you don't need it? You know what I mean? Even though it, like, because for me, I'm a big Star Wars fan, and so that's just tied to my childhood. So I do like reading the books, and so I was just curious if there's any danger in cutting that off. Like, would I be, so along those lines, I guess.
I think that's great. I think you're approaching it with a degree of awareness. I want to say, as always, that the problem isn't whatever the quote unquote escape might be, because it's only if it's an escape, right? Which means some degree of awareness. Like, what are you running from? If you're running from some stressors, if you're running from some turmoil or conflict in your life, and you're deliberately escaping it in this thing, then becoming aware of that is going to make you address the thing you're running from. So it's not just about, looking at the consequence of escapism, but also looking at the benefit of escapism. Why are you doing it? Why do we reach towards escapism? Because of pressure. And usually that pressure comes from us taking ourselves too seriously in other parts of our lives. So if you're addressing that, then there's nothing wrong with continuing to read Star Wars books, right? Or getting involved with anything, really. But it really just comes down to recognizing why you're escaping, doing something about it, so you can enjoy more of what you're doing without so much of it being an escape.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it kind of ties into conversations we've had in the past regarding addictions. And like Ray said before, with any sort of drug or vice or alcohol, if you feel like you need it, that's when you don't go for it. So if you feel like you need something in order to avoid a certain situation in order to feel differently than you're currently feeling, that's the time that you don't do it. When you feel like you don't need it and you're just, trying to have a good time or enjoy something. Like life isn't about avoiding all, we have the whole side of fucking all the shit about dopamine and, oh, you got to avoid the dopamine receptors unless it's a positive thing, and basically just things that reinforce your idea of yourself in a positive way. That's the ones they want you doing. And then the other ones they'll deem negative. But life's not about avoiding any of those things, but there is a degree of recognizing in yourself when you are avoiding something. And I don't think anyone can necessarily tell you what that is. We all kind of know the things that we're avoiding deep down. And there's different things, whether it's reading, whether it's alcohol, whether it's anything whether it's scrolling on social media that we use to avoid those things. But it's not, the vices aren't the issue. It's what we're avoiding, the situation in our day-to-day lives that we're trying to escape. So as Ray said, as you focus on those and work through that and any stress in your life that you're trying to escape, then the escapes, if they are really just escapes, aren't going to seem as necessary. And those that aren't escapes, you're still going to be drawn to because there's something that you enjoy doing. But that's something that self-honesty is very important for, I think, because it's really only comes down to you to know whether something that you're doing is an escape or something that you just enjoy doing, because that is very much a thing. It's not everything we do out of enjoyment is an escape necessarily.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I don't know. So I grew up. That's pretty much all I had for that. So thank you guys.
No worries. I want to throw in one more thing. A good question to ask yourself is, if you really did have all the time in the world, if there was no stress, if there was nothing, no pressure on you whatsoever, let's just say you're rich and you don't have to do anything, would you still do that thing?
Yeah.
And then that's okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, so I've been listening to all the podcasts. I'd be lying if I said I listened to every single one, but most of them.
Likewise.
But yeah, so I grew up very, very Christian, and I pretty much not Catholic, but the evangelical Christian. It's like they say it's not a relationship, or it is a relationship. I fucked it up. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. So I don't know. It's just been kind of crazy over all the different podcasts. Different things have resonated at different times, but a lot of it I I do perceive it pertaining to, my religious upbringing, and that's just how it applies, I guess. So that's how it makes sense to me. But yeah, just it's crazy how you guys make it make sense. And it's just, yeah, I feel like my eyes have been opened in a certain sense. But yeah, it's just, I've had a lot more rougher times mentally, but so I can thank you guys for that. But I've also had some of the most euphoric moments, I feel like, because it's not under the guise of religion, and I don't have to be the middleman of my own existence. It's fucking crazy how that made me feel that way for 21 years of my life. But yeah, so it's props to you guys.
No, props to you, man. You opened your own eyes. There was no eye opening over here. It's on you to resonate with it and do something with it. Words are just words. You're the one that put meaning to it. You're the one that put the insights to work. So there is zero credit taken on our side whatsoever. But it's funny because those recognitions, that's what people are avoiding, that responsibility basically that you took for your life, not passing the buck onto some fictitious idea that exists inside of our mind. It's taking responsibility for your life. And it's not the most comfortable thing at first, but there are lots of, I don't know, rewards, benefits, you can call it whatever, but there are to going through that and actually taking that. It can be scary at first because you can't pass it off to some, to Sky Daddy, as we like to use
got my back,
on the podcast. Exactly. Like it isn't there anymore. And it allows actually through that, whether it's deemed a religion or just a relationship, it whatever it is allows you to maintain your idea of yourself. As you maintain an idea of God, as you maintain that perception of division between yourself and some fictitious idea, you're allowed to maintain the idea of yourself, which is always going to be the root of your suffering. So it's very difficult to let go of the idea of yourself and your own identity as you maintain identities and ideas of all these other things in reality that are separate from you. So yeah, all the power to you, man. That's awesome to hear. Love to hear people leaving the whatever you want to call that system.
Right. It's just crazy to me, like how I didn't see it growing up. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I mean, I understand if that's like the only thing I'm told, but you know what I mean?
I do. I understand for sure. And I think we did. I mean, I think I know for me, because I grew up Roman Catholic, I got, you know, the conditioning, but it only ever resonated because there was an ounce of truth to it that did in fact make sense, which was that there's more to this than just bodies walking around. Like there's some other thing happening here. And so deep down, when we're children, it's not that we believe in God. We straight up were like, yeah, that makes sense. I feel that shit. Absolutely. It's just that we're never discussed. It's never discussed with us from that perspective of being a real thing. It's always something to believe in. It's always about some idea of God, and it just fucks us right up. But I think the reason it ever landed was because of that ounce of truth that's in there.
Right. I had an actually wild experience. So one of my friends who's younger than me, and he's heavily involved in the church, I heard his wife, I was in the car with her for some unrelated thing, but she basically said, we're getting our kids out of the way. Like they're trying to have as many kids as possible while they're young to get them out of the way. I'm curious what you think of that. Like, why do they feel so rushed? I mean, obviously like pressure from society, but it's just, I've never heard somebody reference their kids in the context of getting them out of the way. Kind of crazy.
You mean that's not part of the checklist to being a happy person?
Yeah.
Right. And that's really it. A lot of people say the same thing. Like, there are certain steps. You go to high school, you meet someone, you get married, you have a kid, you get a house, you do that whole thing. And it's just, then I'll be happy, because that's how everybody else achieves happiness. Right. No, it really is just that temptation to oversimplify shit. So that way it's just like from A to B, and that's all I need to do. And it's like, that never works. And have children. I encourage you. It's nothing like you think it will be.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious that we think that there is a possible checklist that we can maintain in order and just accomplish that, and then we're good. And it's the assumption that having kids is a necessary part of life. Like it is a requirement. We don't question the societal blueprint that Ray just laid out. We really don't. We just think that's how it is. And it's not even a very old blueprint. Like it's a very recent, like 100 years that we've been existing in that sort of thing, like high school, college, job, retire, family in between, and then die. And yet there's usually a point when people are in their early to mid 20s, when people, after college, and they're like, wait a second, this was all kind of made up. This wasn't inherent to reality. But some people, they feel that, they question it a little, and then they just run back to their certainties.
And I saw the timer's up, but I guess to wrap it full circle, it's just kind of crazy how probably a year ago, I probably would have heard that and not thought twice about it. So you guys are the shit. I appreciate you guys. And oh yeah, keep doing your shit.
We appreciate you, Mason, very much so. Appreciate you hopping on here and being our first caller today. It's been a slower one, so appreciate you asking questions, and have a great one.
See you guys.
Yeah. All right, Mason. Fuck yeah.
Thanks for kicking it off, Mason. That's great. We really appreciate that. And of course, now we have some people in the queue. So again, if you would like to join the queue, dualisticunity.com/live. Next, we are joined by Amanda. And anybody who's been watching the show for a while knows that Amanda's a huge part of Dualistic Unity. She's always in the groups. She's been just firing off insights fucking left and right lately. So I'm really excited for this conversation. How's it going, Amanda?
Hey, Amanda.
Hey.
Oh. Nice sweatshirt.
Oh, what's this? I don't know how I got into this. No, but I love a good hustle. I always love promoting. It comes so naturally. Why not? But I thought I saw a bat signal. I was like, oh, my guys, they need people to call in. I was like, let me call in. I was in the middle of making new flashcards for my walls because you know how I love to see my thoughts in like physical, in paper form, not in, let me rephrase that. So it was like, am I relaxed? You know, all thoughts are fucked. You know, just helpful reminders, you know, that I like to change up on my walls so that way I can see them because, you know, as much as I can put on a good show of making things look like they're kept together, you know, I get lost in my own sauce. I get lost in the bullshit. So I appreciate having the reminders around me when it's not second nature to be in the moment or in the flow. Because you know, it happens.
Oh, I feel you with that. Absolutely. Always going through it. Always going through it.
Seriously, even when I feel certain things don't feel certain, I'm like, things will be great at work. And then all of a sudden something in my personal life will blow up. And then I was like, all right, didn't see that landmine, lost a toe. We'll recover. We'll find the toe. We'll stitch it back on. Be like,
It'll grow
okay.
back.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I thought I was getting good, but not that good apparently, because you just can't avoid the bombs, and you can't avoid the discomfort, and truly that's probably where I learned the most. Right. So right now I'm in like an isolated period of my life where I'm not really talking to the old friends and family members that I used to. I work from home a lot of the time unless I'm doing events or dropping off banners. I did a little running around today. So I'm just like, okay, as much as this may not feel entirely comfortable, I'm probably going to miss this alone time when I'm busy again with everybody and everything. So I'm like, you know what? Let's turn this frown upside down. Let's enjoy this alone time while we've got it, because it will not last forever. So instead of, you know, the grass is always greener, I'm looking down, grass is looking pretty fucking green.
That's great. I really like that. I like the fact that you can actually take that as a lesson for pretty much anything in terms of, if you're not currently feeling like at some point you're going to look back and miss the experience that you're having right now, do something with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much, because so I was at an event the other day. So I work in community engagement, and our company sponsors events and programs in the community. And then I attend those events, and I set up a booth, I set up a table, I am out there shaking hands, kissing babies. I'm a regular old politician out there, and we have a good time, and we make it meaningful because I bring the meaning to it. But I was at one of those events and I was like, damn, I don't want to be here. I was like, I'd rather be home. And then I was like, yeah, but we've been home and not wanted to be home. So is it really that I don't want to be here? Or is it just that I'm being a little bitch about it and I'm pretending that I don't want to be here instead of making the most of being here? And then I did, and 5 hours flew by like nothing. And I was talking to people and we're engaging. I'm handing out stuff. I'm sitting there, not talking to anybody, just enjoying sitting, just looking around, people watching, checking them out. Oh, they saw me. I'm gonna look away, you know. So, but 5 hours flew by and it was just fantastic. But it was just so funny that I reminded myself, well, even if we went to the place we wanted to be, we've wanted to leave that place too. So it's not, there was this quote I had encountered in high school, and it was like, very often a change of self is needed more than a change of scenery. And I had loved that quote ever since I had read it, because it made so much sense to me that, you know, you could want to leave your parents' house, you could want to leave your relationship, you could want to leave your job, a friendship, anything, a hometown, a place that you've been, and you can move somewhere else, have something entirely different. In every regard, it's entirely different, and you could find yourself miserable again. So it's never, maybe it's a contributing factor, but it's certainly not the main reason why you're miserable. You're miserable because you're miserable, you know, and you don't have to be. And it's so easy to fall into it because it's like a mental quicksand. And the more you fight, the faster you sink, and you're going down, and you're like, oh my God, shit. But then you realize, wait, this is all made up. Fuck 'em. So it's just hilarious and only infuriating when you forget how funny it all is.
Exactly. So often we actually this morning we're talking about our movie review. What was it called? Peaceful Warrior. And a lot of it was about, it's not about, the situation you're going through. It's not about the environment. It's not about all those things. It's about you and your perception of it. And the funnier part is as you start to recognize that you're not what you think you are that environment. You are the entire environment. So who's to say you start changing yourself, that your entire environment starts changing. The people around you start seeing things differently. They start having different conversations. They start seeing themselves a little bit differently, start being a little freer in themselves, not only because you're setting an example of being free, but also because they're you. They're literally you. We maintain this idea, and as much as you can start to recognize that yourself in other people, we still, a fucking idea of yourself is a strong one. It's a real good bitch, but once you start to recognize that it's not the truth of what you are, like all the people in your life and just everything in your environment starts shifting. Like who's to say that trees won't start looking a little brighter? The leaves on the trees won't start looking a little brighter. I'm not discounting the fact that that can start to shift too, that everything about our environment can start to shift. But as long as we're maintaining the idea that we should be somewhere else, then it's not going to be able to shift. Like we're discounting, we're disempowering ourselves and not allowing ourselves to have the influence over the situation as long as we think that we shouldn't be there. Because then it's like if we're thinking we shouldn't be there, we're not there. We're just not. We are almost literally somewhere else other than where we're at. And so we lose all influence that we could possibly have over the situation. Being us, we are that entire situation. And if we're not there for it, we don't have the influence over it, and it's not going to change very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's almost like I I got the most influence from the environment by not trying to influence the environment. I was just, and then almost instantly I became enthusiastic and I was just excited to be here. And that was the source of my excitement was this, I'm just happy. I'm just happy to be here. I'm stoked. This is amazing. I don't want to be anywhere else. This is perfect, and it's only perfect because I don't want to change it. And that's literally like my new experience of perfection is that I want it to remain changeless. I do not want to change it. I do not want to influence. And because I have that experience, it feels like perfection, something to just enjoy, but not influence because I don't want to, I don't need to. So it feels so amazing. And the environment feels so different too. And it's probably a combination of being more relaxed and not being in the way. But I feel like I feel everything more. Like I feel the air. I was walking from my car to my front door the other day and I could just feel the wind like wrapping around me. And it was just, and everything looked different. And it was almost like a filter, like a movie filter had been put through my eyes. And everything just looked like it was moving in slow motion. And I just stopped. I took the first step up the staircase and then I just stopped and I just breathed it all in. And I looked up and I looked around and I saw a neighbor and they saw me and I just smiled. And then I was like, all right, right up the stairs, and it was just, and they just watched me enjoy taking one step, and that one step was like so beautiful and intense that I just wanted to revel in it and relish that moment. And then I just sauntered up the stairs and and it was just oh my God,
Because
it was
life
so
is easier
beautiful.
when there's no weight. That's really what it is. Everybody wants to try and get, it's like, how do I find motivation? How do I find happiness? It's like, you're getting in the way of it right now. Like you're getting in the way by trying to get to somewhere when it's in fact all of that need, all that desperation, all that assumption, all of that, that's actually making it harder for you to feel the absolute sheer intensity of being what you already are. And in that intensity is enthusiasm. In that intensity is learning and growth and empathy and sensitivity and all that stuff. But it's in the uncertainty. So it's not about trying to get somewhere. It's about relaxing into where you are and what you are right now. And then once you've done that, then you can start to play with it. then you can start to actually enjoy it. But as long as you're avoiding it, you don't even know what you're missing.
Exactly. And yeah, and just being relaxed is the influence. Like not wanting to change everything, that has way more influence than anything you could possibly think of to try and change it. Anything you could do, that state of relaxation is going to have so much more of an impact than you can ever possibly imagine.
It's true.
Amanda.
Oh my goodness. I know. It's just
we love having you. We love that.
I love being here. So I keep coming back, I can't explain why. It just keeps happening and I'm here for it.
We always appreciate it for sure. For anybody who would like to continue the discussion with Amanda after this show, we are going to be on Patreon for a tier 2 call today. So patreon.com/dualistic unity. You can sign up for tier 2. It's only $25 a month. You get some merch, you get a bunch of cool shit and some retreat discounts because we're doing mini retreats now. So tier 2 gets $150 discount on all retreat tickets going forward. So if you can join us, we would love to see you. And as always, Amanda, thank you so much for calling in and making this episode awesome.
Of course. I'll see you guys around. Bye.
Bye, Amanda.
This is great.
Right.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So that's 2. I do want to mention to everybody that we do these call-in shows every 2 weeks. So the next time you catch one, definitely call in early because now we have people in the queue and hopefully we can get everybody in. I'm really hoping. The next person here is Ashley. Ashley would like to discuss existential dread and expanding consciousness. So we're keeping it light. This is going to be a good conversation. We really appreciate the suggestion. I always like talking about existence and consciousness. And so with that goes a certain degree of dread. Absolutely. This should be a fun discussion. Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. It is so good to be here.
Ashley.
I feel like I have a million thoughts going through my head at the moment. And the thing that's the most present, and then we can maybe get into the existential dread, is I'm just having thoughts around like anxiety around public speaking. And I'm just like noticing my own experience of wanting to join in on the call and noticing like that somatic feeling in my body of my heart racing and just generally feeling nervous. And it just feels so silly, just to be like an observer of just observing that. And it's like, it's real and it's also silly all in one,
Agreed.
So I just felt the need to throw that out there before we talk about anything.
I really appreciate that. I would like to throw out the possibility that, in fact, the feeling that you're having is helping you draw your attention closer to the moment. And so although it's unpleasant, the fact is you're doing great.
I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no, I totally feel you. I still get, and it's funny because with any of those feelings, there's nothing, no book you can read, no video you can watch. It's gonna solve it. It's gonna cure it. It's not about getting rid of the nerves or whatever. It's just about shifting your perspective. It's about letting go of the idea that they shouldn't be happening. That you shouldn't be feeling the way that you're feeling, or that you need to get rid of them. I actually. Funny because this is the second time I've brought this up. I filmed a video in between a couple of our calls today. 5 things I'd tell my 15-year-old self to help navigate high school and life. And one of them was, it's okay to be nervous. It is okay to be nervous. I had this for years of my life, this whole idea that I would feel nervous all the time. And if I could just get rid of the nerves, then I could do all the stuff I wanted to do. And over time, it took me years to recognize this. It was never about getting rid of the nerves. It was never about it. You can be nervous and simultaneously do a really good job like you're doing right now. They are not mutually exclusive whatsoever, but our resistance to them, like you have a presentation or a speech or whatever, you start feeling nervous about it. And you're like, start having the thoughts, this is silly, this is dumb. You're trying to convince yourself that you shouldn't be feeling nervous. And that's actually focusing so much on that it's growing it because you're resisting it, and it's like expanding because of that, as opposed to sitting in it and being like, yeah, this is just a feeling. It is what it is. I'm calling it nerves, but that's just a word. It's just a feeling that I'm feeling. I don't have to fight it. I don't have to get rid of it. It's just something that I'm feeling right now, and it's very much okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and that actually allows it to begin to subside a bit. But it's not about getting rid of them ever. That's the flip that helps a lot. It helped me a lot, was letting go of the idea that I shouldn't be feeling them, no matter how silly that it was, because it's happened on, our episodes. We've done so many episodes, and there's certain episodes that just for whatever reason, I'll just be feeling some nerves. And at first I'm like, this is silly. I've done like almost 200 of these. Why am I feeling nervous right now? And then it's like, let go of that. And there's nothing wrong with it. It is what it is. You fighting them is only going to make them louder, only going to make it more intense. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely having like that level of acceptance, it just is what it is. And the more that you can practice just being okay in that discomfort, and, like I can notice that difference between how I respond like 10 years ago, where it is all consuming, and then you go mute, right? As opposed to like being able to acknowledge it and say, it's okay. I don't need to be whatever my idea of perfect is. I can just show up and try. And that's great. That's great. And then since you're not so hyper focused on that feeling, you can be more present and actually, be in the moment, be in the conversation, instead of so attached to the feeling.
Exactly. Well said. And it's funny because it's very much like the lesson that you learn when you're driving a car, or when you learn to drive a car. Don't focus on the tree, right? The tree that you focus on is the tree that you're going to hit. And anxiety is the same way. Don't be anxious about anxiety. As soon as you're afraid of feeling anxious, it just doubles and quadruples and continues to turn into more and more anxiety. It really just comes down to stop staring at it. Just stop staring at it, focus on something else, and you'll start to recognize it's not as big as it becomes when you're giving it all that attention.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anyway, on to the existential dread.
I'm up for it.
I don't know about you guys, but I find at times, I guess I was kind of relating to what Amanda was talking about, of like not wanting to be in certain places. And, that could be another example of like getting caught up in those thoughts. And it's such a fine line, I feel like, with being so aware of your thoughts, because it's like really that fight of letting go or getting really wrapped up in them. And I feel like sometimes it's so hard. It's so hard to let go. And I guess sometimes if I am say I am home and I'm really stressed because I'd rather be doing something else, but then I go out and I'm socializing and I'm feeling anxious, or there's something about the situation that I don't like, and now I'm like, I don't want to be here. It can like create this feeling of like, well, I don't feel okay anywhere. And that can just feel very isolating and lonely. But then, other moments are really beautiful and magical. And it's just like, I know everything ebbs and flows, but sometimes in those moments where it's more of that ebbing, it is extremely difficult to get through it. So I was just curious, some thoughts on that.
Yeah, it straight up sucks. Absolutely. I would like to take a moment and mention that there is nothing that I currently let go of easily that at one point wasn't difficult. And it's just because of the contrast. It's because I spent so long investing in these things as truth, that when you first start questioning them, when you first start going through the experience of like, okay, I'm just going to face this, it's not easy. It feels like you're hitting like a tornado. It really does feel like you're going into a category 5 storm, and there's nothing except you. But it's largely just because you haven't spent that time developing that sense of uncertainty and faith in yourself over time, right? So it feels more than it is, and it's only because of the contrast. But each time you push through, even if you don't feel like a success, this is really an important thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you go to a place and suddenly you feel socially anxious and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go. That's not a failure. You went. So now you've recognized that you can do at least that much. Now the next time it's okay, maybe I'll push myself an extra 5 minutes, right? But it's always just pushing beyond what your comfort level is. So you can recognize that it's a little larger than you might think it is, but it takes time. In some areas of your life, it's going to be easier than others because, frankly, you haven't been as invested. This is the thing about other people. We don't recognize how much time and attention we have invested in the idea that how they perceive us gives us or takes away our value. We don't recognize that was like a 10-year span in our teenage life. Like, we really did double down on that feeling, and everybody else committed to it as well. So going into a social situation, even knowing like, well, yeah, that's all bullshit though, that doesn't mean your brain understands that right away. Like, your brain's still relying on a decade of training to think a certain way. So it's going to take a little bit, and it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but it's only at first. And every time you push through, it will get easier.
Yeah. I think especially as you start doing more work on yourself, start being more aware of these things, we can get almost jump ahead of where we're currently at. Like, we think we shouldn't be feeling these things ever. Like, oh, I've been doing all this work, I've been doing this stuff, questioning things, recognizing I'm not what I think I am, or whatever it may be. Like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be further along. I should be more okay with this. And it's not that. Like, we're always fluctuating across that spectrum. And we've talked about this before, but it's almost like there's multiple layers of things that we go through that we have to peel back. And it could be that, the layers they're big on the top, kind of like, like an onion. The layers on top are bigger. You cut an onion in half, you start peeling it back. And so it could be that going through a specific situation, feeling, like you shouldn't be in a certain spot is like the end point. It seems like a spot you were in years ago, but it's like the end point of one layer getting peeled back. And you never really know when that shift is going to be felt, but it's continuing on despite it, relaxing into that uncertainty. Like, really, really, it's still like in those situations, there's still always going to be that settling upon, I know that this is a certain way. I know this is how I'm feeling. Like, we're always trying to settle upon that certainty and understanding that I still don't know what's happening. I still don't know the situation that fucking sucks ass right now. I'm going to learn some stuff from it. There's going to be a point maybe in 5 years where I look back at this and be like, damn, that kind of sucked, but I learned a lot from that. I grew a lot from those situations and proved a lot to myself that just being willing to go through it despite how I felt was something that I could do. But a lot of times it's just getting so ahead of ourselves and thinking that we shouldn't be feeling a certain way. We should have gotten over this by now. And that's never the case. There is no should. There is no shouldn't ever.
Yeah, no, that's definitely really helpful. It's always so fascinating because, these are things that I know and I talk about and I hear all the time. And it can be very frustrating where it's like you need these reminders almost constantly. And, that's how the brain works, unfortunately.
Absolutely. This is actually something that I've said so many times over the years because people tend to want to think it's just about getting it. Like, it's just about getting it, right? And then everything's going to be okay. It's like, no, not at all. It's 24/7, reminding your brain that it doesn't know. Like, it's 24/7 just working against what your brain is habitually telling you until it's not habitually telling you that anymore. But, that's a process. It's not just about understanding it once. It's about understanding it once and then going into a situation where you feel completely unprepared and then trying to understand it again.
Never ending.
But you start to enjoy it after a while. There are times now where I jump into things that I know are
Mhm.
going to be unpleasant. I embrace parts of my life that are challenging, where everything might end up getting shaken. I might lose everything. I might have to start from scratch. And I recognize now that this is a chance for me to learn more about myself, but it's only through that discomfort. It's only through that process. And so it's just going into it until you recognize that you actually like going into it. But it does take some time.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I appreciate it, guys.
We
We
really
appreciate
appreciate
you.
you calling in, Ashley. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have a good one, Ashley.
And hopefully we will see you again or in one of the Patreon groups. We are going to be doing this call-in show every 2 weeks. So of course you can join us anytime. It's always nice to have new members giving us a call, chatting with us, asking us questions, and especially bringing up really insightful insights like that. And these are common things that we all go through. I mean, this is the reason that we like this call-in show, is because people are asking things that Andrew and I also ask. These are things that we go through too. And it's really important to recognize that any advice or any information that we're giving you in response to your question is because we have the same questions.
Exactly. Yes, we do not have answers. We are just, what did Krishnamurti say? Weighing things together. That is it. So you are weighing things as much as we are.
We have one more caller for today's call-in show, and it's Ben, who we have seen before on the call-in show and as well as in our Patreon groups. Ben would like to discuss symbols and resonance. We have about 13 minutes left of today's episode, so 10 of those minutes are for you, Ben. How's it going, man?
What's up, Ben?
Awesome. Sounds great. Okay. So I guess yeah, I was listening to Raw episode 29, and it is a fantastic episode. It's like blowing my mind, rocking my socks, splattering my brain across the wall. And it's funny because I mean, I listen to the podcast quite frequently, and I like, and you know, sometimes I'll go like a full episode or so, and yeah, it's always really great and fun to listen to. But sometimes, you know, an episode just wouldn't hit that deep, which is okay. But because like you also have the thought, oh, I mean, I've been listening to this podcast for over a year. Like, how much deeper can it get? And then you just keep listening, and then there's just like all of a sudden Raw episode 29 just blowing my mind, every single conversation that you guys had. I guess the first part that really got me, like, kind of bridged a gap in my knowledge, was the simultaneous physical and internal experience that's happening at the same time. And it's like, I think Ray was saying, like, if you're hungry, then that is a physical experience, the feeling of hunger. Yeah, I should probably eat. I should probably get some food. But then, like, almost behind that is the internal experience of hunger that is projected out into the physical experience, but they're both happening at the same time. And so that, because I always think, like, you know, of like wants and needs, like you need food to live. So if you get the physical experience of hunger, and then you realize that it's also the internal experience happening at the same time, you know, you always have a choice. Like, yeah, it's like, because it's not really a need, because you can choose to give in to that feeling of hunger or not and starve and die. So it's like, it's always a choice. So that's my first thing.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've ever heard of the breatharians. I think they're called the breatharians. But basically their entire concept is that they don't have to eat, or even in some cases drink water, and it's because of their regimen of drink or of breathing, as well as absorbing sunlight at certain times in the day.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah. So the food, yeah, iffy as to
Yeah.
whether or not it's a need, right? But I think with that, and we could take it to an extreme and say you can go until you starve and die. But I think there's a big gap between feeling hungry because you haven't eaten since breakfast and it's lunchtime, and starving to death. And I think a lot of people don't really understand the difference and how big of a gap that is. And so when you start to get hunger pangs, it's just that is a hormonal response. It's called ghrelin, is like the hunger hormone, and it actually spikes just when you're used to eating. So if you eat 3 meals a day, like 9 a.m., noon, 5 p.m., like you can measure it, and it spikes during those times. And a spike means it comes back down. So if you actually go through that time period, get to the other side, you're actually not hungry anymore. You're just not. And so being hungry and starving are actually two very, very different experiences. Hunger really is just a hormone. And so I think that I don't remember that episode super well, but I think what we're getting across is how quickly people turn that, they'll feel some hunger pangs, their stomach will growl, and they'll be like, I need food. I need it so bad. And they're just like, it's so disempowering to think that you are that tied and that needy that you need to eat like at a certain time, on the time, all the time. And we just don't, quite frankly. But we're always sort of disempowering ourselves with confusing wants with needs. So I think that's probably along the lines of what we were talking about with
it's entirely possible we were going a little deeper than that. And I just want to weigh in on this quickly, because so from the subjective experience, from the experience of our awareness, we're only ever experiencing ourselves. And if this really is an intricate dream, in which case we are all just experiencing our own awareness, then typically what you're doing is you feel that you need more energy. And as a result, you need to go to another part of you to get energy. And we call that food. But what if you could understand that you are in fact the dream? That you're not actually getting energy from anything because you don't lack energy. It's all you. Would you still need to go out and find another energy source to supplement you? Does it come down to the recognition that you are not divided? And does the perception of division necessitate the experience of lack and diminishment? And if that's the case, can you understand that you're always reinvigorating yourself with energy, because it's always all you? There is no source outside yourself as a source of energy that you actually need. It's more the perception of physicality. And I think that might have been where we were going.
Yeah. I think the way you guys took it was just like, yeah, like how vast the internal is, like within you, that you have these physical experiences that are tied into your internal awareness of self. But if you can really relax into that, because you can't really contract into the internal experience, but you can relax into it. And if you relax deep enough, then I mean, you'll see how vast you are. But the question is how willing are you to look into yourself, because it's it's infinite in there. But what you were saying about the perception of division necessitating the need to give in to the feelings of hunger, it's like, all right, if you really, it must be a certain level that you let go of yourself to be like, oh yeah, I mean, it's not just from food, it's from the sun or clean air, something similar to that group that you were talking about.
The breatharians. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think
Yeah.
about it, it makes sense, because sunlight becomes plant matter, becomes food for animals. And so really it's just sunlight that we're absorbing. It's just energy that we're absorbing through the process of it becoming physical and us absorbing it that way. But it's really still just energy, which means that we can get it from the original sunlight that in fact was feeding the plants.
Yeah, it's interesting that it has to take the path of going into a plant, or like eating grass-fed ground beef. Like, okay, yeah, it goes into the plant, then it goes into the cow, and then it's into you. It's just wild exchange of energy.
Yeah. And who's to say it does have to? I think there's just a massive commitment to the idea of ourself that necessitates that, because it is all, it's all made out of the same base elements, including us, and there is no division. It's all just vibrating energy, essentially. So is it not just an excuse to make sense? Like, we can settle upon the certainty and maintain the idea of ourself, and that allows us to do so through those processes of sunlight to plant to animal to eating it, eating a piece of steak or something. And that's all that it is. But we're so committed, like we're so infinite and fucking powerful, or whatever words you want to use, that we can actually convince ourselves that we need that in order to sustain life. Like, life has always sustained itself. And so who's to say that you need anything outside of you once you recognize that there's nothing outside of you?
What helps with that is going on a fast. 24 hours, maybe even longer, because you'll have those first hunger pangs, and then, like you were saying, how it's the hormone spike causes, I'm not sure the details of what you just described, but basically you can move past that first hunger feeling, and then you just aren't hungry anymore. And our commitment to 3 meals a day, I think, it's gotten a little too far. Like, we don't need 3 meals a day. I don't know, that's something I've found through the fast that I've done.
Oh yeah, I've definitely been there. I think I've done like 44 hours at one point. I was super into that stuff for a while. It's kind of a cool experience, I will say. Like, this on day 2, especially after you go through a full day, it's it's interesting. You feel very focused and just energized in a way, because there's not so much weighing you down. But yeah, it's a fun one. Definitely down to chat more about it on Patreon in a bit. But always a pleasure having you on, Ben. Appreciate you calling in and bringing up some of these cool topics.
Of course. Yeah, sounds good. I'll be on the call, so I'll see you guys soon. But next time I'm hungry, I'm just gonna go outside, sit in the sun, and drink it.
Absolutely.
Amen.
It's funny. I think the practice is to meditate on the earliest morning sunlight and the last sunlight of the day. So I encourage you to check it out. Breatharianism. It's an interesting thing. I don't know if I'd necessarily ever go to that extreme, because frankly, I really like flavor.
Hell yeah. Yeah, flavor's great. But all right. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Talk to you soon, man. All right. This has been fun. Appreciate everyone for calling in. We got through our queue right in the nick of time. So looking forward to chatting with some of you on Patreon. And final announcement, Tier 2 Vermont tickets are available to Tier 2 supporters. And if you're interested in coming, you get discounts on Patreon. So if you want to come to a retreat, fucking get on Patreon. They're like ridiculous discounts. Also, we may have to have a business meeting about shifting that around, but not anytime soon. So anyway, thank you. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we'll chat with a few of you in about 15 minutes on Patreon.